What is up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Shout, a Buffalo Bills football podcast. With a special guest today. We are a little bit over a week away from the start of the NFL draft, and I can't think of anybody better to get in right now to really dive deep through a Bills lens at this draft class than Mr. Dane Brugler from The Athletic. Just finished The Beast, which is available on The Athletic right now. How are you, my friend? And man, talk us through that process. I mean, what's it like when you finally press send at the end of that journey?
Well, it's always nerve-wracking because it's 18 months of work wrapped up into this document, and you can't help but second guess yourself on, corner 13, corner 14. I should have flip-flopped, things like that. You always you second guess yourself a little bit, but it's a lot of work, and it's gratifying when I get the feedback and people are enjoying it. And even if you don't agree with my rankings, like that's fine, that's great. Trust your own eye. But the resources that are in there in that guide, it really is what I try to make it so it's unmatched. All the pro day testing for almost 2,000 players, or the background information. Then of course all the analysis and all the different metrics involved in there. So at my heart, I am an NFL draft fan, and so I want to create something that everybody, or that I would want to buy and to immerse myself in, and hopefully that's what a lot of people are getting out of it. So if you're doesn't matter if you're a casual fan, a diehard fan, I think there's something for everybody in the Beast this year.
There really is, and you can subscribe to The Athletic. It becomes a part of your subscription. You get all of what they offer over there. They have beat writers for every sport, every league, every team. It's really a great value. But for draft time, what I really love about it is the deep dive that you could take on players, because a lot of teams, like the Bills are a great example, because year to year I think fans are trying to, the highlights are great, but they're trying to sift through all the details, because there's a specific kind of player that the Bills typically try to target in this thing. And interestingly enough, in your first mock draft that dropped earlier this offseason, you had them trading up to get Adonai Mitchell, excuse me. And I think that's really interesting, because you kind of gave the caveat that you didn't know if it was necessarily a culture fit. Then you kind of read up on Mitchell. Can you take us through that a little bit, what you think of that player? Because he's a hot topic amongst Bills fans.
Yeah, clearly a talented player. You look at just the size and the ability. 6'2", but just about 205 pounds. Ran in the low 4.3s at the combine. Very loose, very limber athlete. And I think that looseness also pertains to his route running. Not the most precise and disciplined as a route runner. There are a lot of ups and downs on his film, and that's obviously, the high points are the high points, but you want to get the body of work and to really understand who this player is. I don't know that the passing offense at Texas really allowed him to shine as much as he is capable of. And of course, he was at Georgia for 2 years before he went to Texas this past year. But when you watch the highlights, you can see what is so appealing about Mitchell. He's got that long striding athleticism, so he can win deep. He can win those vertical patterns, but he can also get open underneath. The biggest concerns I think I have, just not being a big yak threat. He's not a guy that's going to make guys miss and be someone that defenses are really worried about after the catch. Play strength is part of that. Not going to break a lot of tackles. And then just, is he fully locked in? So every single snap, he's running the route to the precise points and landmarks that he needs to be. Because we know in the NFL, it is all about timing, and in the passing game, it's almost like a dance. You better be on point. And for Mitchell, does he have the discipline needed, where there's not even a question that he's going to be where Josh Allen needs him to be? And I think that's where some of the question marks come in for the Bills. Does he have the football character up to the level that Brandon Beane and that coaching staff, what they are looking for in a first-round pick, especially a first-round pick they could potentially move up for if they don't feel great that he will fall to them. So Mitchell is a little bit of a risk. There is risk involved, and some teams are more risk adverse. Other teams, you look at this regime; they've never been shy to trade up in the first round if they think they're doing it for the right player. And so you better be convinced with a guy like Mitchell, and it needs to be more than just we need we need a true X, we need this. That's obviously the needs are there. But to make a move, you better be convinced that you're making the move for the right player. And Mitchell is one of those guys where I could understand either way if he's the fit for the Bills that they're looking for.
Let's stay on receiver for a second. And another guy that's kind of in that range, you have similarly ranked is Lad McConkey, who I think has been so polarizing as people try to figure out exactly what he is. And I think I was listening to you on the Athletic Football Show with Nate Tice and Robert Mays. You guys do a great job on those podcasts, and mentioning the fact that maybe he's not like the prototypical X. He could do some things on the boundary, but a little bit of a different how you envision him in your offense. How would the holdup for me has been with McConkey is he seems a little bit redundant with what they have in Khalil Shakir. And I know they play Shakir predominantly in the slot, but how do you view McConkey in terms of his fit with the Bills?
I think that's fair, the way you painted it, because I think Lad McConkey's not a slot-only player. He has inside-outside versatility, but I think to truly maximize what he can do, you want him taking some snaps out of the slot. Maybe it's 50-50, whatever it may end up being, but he is so shifty and so quick with his ability to get open as a route runner, and it's not just – he has the athletic talent, the physical gifts where he can make guys miss and get open, and we saw that with the testing numbers, 4.3 speed. The short shuttle was under 4 seconds, which is unbelievable. 6.723 cone, but it's all about the route running with him too. He is an advanced route runner, and you see that his ability to pair the athleticism with the know-how. That's what makes Lad McConkey special. So sometimes we feel like we have to paint these guys in a specific way. So, okay, you have your X, you got your Y, you got your Z, and it fits the prototype of exactly what we're looking for. But I think, you look at Stephon Diggs. I don't think Stephon Diggs, especially coming out as a prospect, wasn't your ideal X receiver necessarily. He had some ability there, but I don't think you necessarily painted him as the prototypical X. But he grew into that, obviously, in the NFL. With a guy like Lad McConkey, I'm not saying he's going to grow into being a true X, but I think he can grow into being a player you use across the formation. So if the Bills are dead set on getting that true X receiver, Lad McConkey's probably not going to be a fit. Probably not going to be a guy that they're going to look at in the first round. But if they're a little more open-minded about how they want to structure the offense and the wide receiver depth chart, and just prioritize, let's get guys that can get open and give our quarterback a target, then all of a sudden Lad McConkey becomes much more of a possibility. But I understand the concerns too. I'm a big Lad McConkey fan. I think you cannot name the top 32 players in this draft without naming Lad McConkey. But I understand from a Bills perspective, if you're looking for more size at that position, if you're looking for someone that you trust more on the outside, and let's with McConkey too, we have to factor in the injury history, especially this past year, missing so many games because of a back. Then he had an ankle issue, so that's part of his evaluation as well. Is he's not a big guy to begin with, but then also factor in some durability concerns, and I can understand why that would maybe shy the Bills away from going that direction and maybe target somebody else.
Take me into your process a little bit. You mentioned it's an 18-month, kind of push. You're probably watching guys at different stages of the process. Are you when you have somebody's tape on, are you noting when you're evaluating them or writing their scouting report that, this might be a player that fits nicely with a specific team that you could kind of come back to later in the process and maybe say, oh, I'm doing a mock draft. Your 7-rounder comes out tomorrow, and go back to those notes and maybe kind of fill in some gaps that way?
Sure, and I think you get that natural feel right away for a specific scheme, a specific skill set. What certain teams like, and that's a 7-round mock draft is daunting because it's obviously you're trying to project all 257 picks. but I enjoy it because it's an exercise that really forces you to buckle down on draft tendencies. And it's not just draft needs, like, okay, this team needs a quarterback, boom, next quarterback's this guy. It's not like that, because obviously we know draft boards around the league are 150 names, sometimes less, sometimes maybe a little bit more, but they're not these expansive lists. I mean, teams really boil it down to specific traits that they are looking for at the position, and then culture fits, character matters, medicals matter, all these factors come in. And just by understanding what certain teams are looking for based off of draft tendencies in the past, whether it's the Packers having certain thresholds with arm length at corner, or a different team having a certain threshold at offensive tackle with the size, all these things factor in. So yeah, there's no doubt when I'm taking my notes, it's like, okay, yeah, this guy's a Brandon Beane type of player. This guy's a Jonathan Gannon type of player out in Arizona. Like, all those things come into play, and it's the more you do this, the more I think you understand and see those things a little bit more clear than even a couple years ago. And part of that is learning these drafters, these general managers, these coaches, and that's what makes a team like the Commanders a little bit tough. We have a brand new ownership, first-year general manager, a defensive coordinator who became a head coach, now in his second time as a head coach at Dan Quinn. So there's a little more intrigue with a team like the Commanders, but a team like the Bills, we have a pretty good track record of what Brandon Beane likes. We know he's not afraid to be aggressive. If they want a guy, they're going to trade up and go get him. But you know what? They care about character. They care about both football and personal character. That's something that matters to them, and that will affect how they build their draft board and ultimately who they draft.
Let me put you on the spot here really quick. I mean, wide receiver, safety, defensive line, across the defensive line. Is there somebody that if I was putting you on the spot, you'd say, man, through all of this, research that I've done, this guy or these couple of guys are like Bills guys?
Rome Odunze, and it's tough. I don't want to talk too much about Rome Odunze because I don't want to get Bills fans excited about him when the opportunity to get him seems pretty slim. But if they were to make that Julio Jones type of trade, which seems unlikely because this is a team that needs young, inexpensive players, and so they can't afford to give away too many draft picks. But if they were to make a Julio Jones trade, and let's just say Rome Odunze makes it to number 9, and they give the Bills the deal that they need to get this deal done, and the Bears might be open to it at 9 because they only have 4 draft picks in this draft. They need some more pieces. So to me, Rome Odunze is kind of the perfect fit for what they want. He's a guy that gives you inside-outside versatility. He can be a true X. He has speed. He has good size. He's 6'3", 220 pounds. Very good route runner. Catches the ball really well through contact, and he can give you a little bit after the catch as well. So just understanding who Rome Odunze is as a guy, as a person, and then also as a player, I think he checks all the boxes. So I have no doubt that they will be tempted to potentially make a big move like that if Rome Odunze is still there at 9. I just have a hard time seeing them follow through just because, again, it is hard to part with a lot of these draft picks when they need that young, cheap talent that comes from the draft picks.
You mentioned checking boxes, and that's a good transition to this next player I want to ask you about. Reportedly, the Bills have had Laiatu Latu in for a top 30 visit, and he's an intriguing player because, one of the top pass rushers in this draft. The Bills have this sneaky need there. I mean, they have Von Miller coming back on the restructured deal, Greg Rousseau going into his 4th season, AJ Epinesa back on a short deal, but not a lot of depth after that. And I almost feel like they got to look long-term starting now, maybe even at cornerback too, which is sneaky not a need right now. But after Rasul Douglas is a free agent next offseason, there's not a lot of guys under contract. So with Latu, the big thing with him, obviously, are the neck injuries from a couple years ago. How big of an issue is that for teams that you're hearing? And what led to you landing at him at number 22?
Honestly, I expected it to be more of an issue, but the teams that I've talked to have cleared him. So that's obviously a great thing for him. Now, it's always tricky when you talk medicals because like for a lot of teams, what they do is they use a number system, 1 through 4, and if it's a certain number, and that really represents the risk. So if it's a 1 and it's like, okay, we got to stay away. If it's 4, okay, we're not maybe quite as worried. So it's every team does it a little bit differently, and their appetite for risk is a little bit different. But the things that I've heard on Latu are okay. We feel like the issue that he had in the past should not be something that would stop us from signing him to a second contract eventually. And obviously that's great for him. And what you love about Latu in his game, he's not, the size is good, not great. The athleticism is good, not great. He's not the superhuman athlete, but he understands pass rush savvy. I mean, he is so skilled with his hands. It's really impressive to watch. It's for a guy that's really he's a 4th-year guy. Well, actually a 5th-year guy, but he missed really 2 seasons, so he's only been playing as a starter the last 2 years at UCLA. For a guy that has that little experience, for him to understand how to use his hands so well and break down the rhythm of blockers, it's really impressive to watch. A lot of guys, especially coming out of college, they know the mechanics of a cross chop and do all these different moves, but they just kind of throw it out. There's no timing, there's no rhythm to what they're doing. With Latu, there's a reason for every little thing that he's doing, and that's a lot of fun to watch. So I agree with you in what you said about the needs at edge rusher and corner. If Jared Verse, if Liatu Latu, if one of those 2 players were to fall a little bit, I think both would be terrific fits for the Bills. And I know we're wide receiver heavy with the way we talk about what the Bills are going to do in the first round, but if the right receiver isn't there, you can't force it. And receiver is strong enough where it's a position that's going to stretch. And so 2nd round, I mean, even in the 3rd round, 4th round, I mean, you can move around a little bit and still come away with some wide receiver help that you feel confident will help your offense. Whereas in the 1st round, if you can come away with a Latu or a Jared Verse, or maybe even one of these corners, whether it's Cooper DeJean, and Cooper DeJean is really interesting because he gives you that versatility where he can give you snaps at safety if you need it, or he can play outside corner. So while I think wide receiver is the right way we should be talking about the Bills and what they could be doing at 28, there is at least a chance that if the right player falls to them, we could see them go in a different direction as well.
Day 2 is going to be interesting because the Bills don't have a 3rd-round pick right now, but I wouldn't be surprised with all of the day 3 ammunition Brandon has if he's able to get up into the 3rd. 2 guys I want to ask you about because, man, Bills Mafia, they find their players that they kind of attach onto during mock season, and they're all about them. Cole Bishop, Utah, obviously the connection. The Bills have some intel there, having drafted Dalton Kincaid a year ago. And then Malik Mustafa are 2 names that are really popular day 3 or day 2 targets. What do you think about those 2 guys? I know you had Cole ranked a little bit higher, especially thinking through the prism of could one of them potentially be a perfect kind of replacement developmental player for Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer and what they did in Buffalo?
Yeah, what you love about Bishop, coming from that Utah defense, Morgan Scalley, he had his safeties doing everything. So, if you want to see Cole Bishop play single high, you want to see him play near the box, you want to see him, play on an island. He's a size player. He's 6'2", 206 with 4.4 speed. Banged up a little bit during the process, so we didn't get the 3-cone, we didn't get the short shuttle. While I really do like him, one of the things that left me wanting a little bit more was I wanted to see more impact plays. And it's always tough when you're talking about safeties because you have to really factor in what are they being asked to do. Are they being kind of held back and they're being disciplined? They're being coached not to go try to make a play, not be aggressive because they want their safeties to be that last line of defense. With Utah, they really want their safeties to go make plays. And it's not that Cole Bishop didn't make plays. I mean, he was a factor versus the run. He had a couple interceptions. But I thought if I'm going to draft a safety in the first 2 rounds, I really want him I want to be able to point to the tape and say, look him go create this play or go create that play. And I don't think he did that enough. And so that's why I gave him more of a late 2, early 3rd round grade. But I could be right there in that range for where the Bills could be picking in the late 2nd round. And then Mustafa's a fun player as well. He's undersized. He's 5'10", 205. Not small. He's short, but not small. He is well put together, and he's explosive. But another guy that I wanted to see more plays, especially in coverage. He had only one interception over the last 2 years, not a ton of ball production, but he will come down, run the alley. He will make plays in the run game. Almost looks like a mini linebacker with the way he plays. There is zero hesitation in the way he plays. It's very aggressive, very, okay, I'm not going to doubt myself. This is what I see. Boom, I'm going to go attack. And that's what you love about him. So both these guys, they belong on day 2. It's just, okay, where do we feel comfortable drafting him? Are they will they fall to us in the 3rd round? Do we feel comfortable waiting and seeing if they fall to us? Because ultimately that's where I think they should go. But as we know, in the NFL draft, if you wait too long, there's a good chance your guys could be picked ahead of time, especially if you're targeting certain players. But I think both Cole Bishop, Malik Mustafa, they probably fit what the Bills are looking for, and I think they're easy players to like.
If I could have you do this, if you'd be down with it, break a little news. I know you have the mock coming out tomorrow. This is going to run at about 8 o'clock tonight. Would you want to say what you have the Bills doing in the mock and explaining it a little bit?
All right, let me pull it up here. So let me look here. I do have them trading, kind of along the lines of what we were talking about with wanting an X receiver in this draft, only having so many of those guys. I do have them trading up in the 1st round for Brian Thomas. It's we talked about maybe that Julio Jones trade, and is it worth it? Everything that would cost. This is kind of like the hedge your bet version, where we're still going to give up some draft capital to go up and get a player we really like, but we're not going to make that move all the way up. So you trade up with Jacksonville at 17. You get Brian Thomas Jr. You get a guy that is more inexperienced than raw. I don't think he's raw as a route runner. I think he's just inexperienced. I mean, you watch him on film, and it's a lot of goes, a lot of vertical routes, a lot of slants. But I think he can. I mean, you see him run other routes as well, and I think he has it in him. It's just he wasn't asked to do that in that LSU offense. So I think that there is more to him as a route runner than given credit for. And then of course, a guy with that size, 6'3", 210, running on the 4.3s. His range, especially when the ball's in the air, he will go and get it. Led the FBS in touchdown catches. So, he's a guy that, especially when you get down inside the 40, inside the 20, can really make a difference for you. So I like what he brings at again, it'll be a cost, but not as much of a cost as it would be as trading up into the top 10. So Brian Thomas, I have them making a move, and then I'll keep the other picks. People need to check it out. Yeah. But I'll say it this way: in the 2nd round, I have them drafting somebody that we have mentioned so far in this show, and then I have them doubling up at receiver, getting one in the 4th round. So a name that I know some Bills fans like. So it's they're doubling up at receiver, and then adding some pretty valuable depth on day 3. Honestly, if I'm a Bills fan and this is how it played out, I would not be mad at all. I think it'd be a situation where, okay, we can live with this. This is maybe not the ideal best scenario, but pretty close to it. And so I think Buffalo Bills fans would be happy with it.
This is really cool, kind of to look at the first one. You traded up for a receiver. Now you trade up even more aggressively for a receiver in the second one. How much did that have to do with them trading Stephon Diggs?
Yeah, it's certainly part of it, obviously. And you have Josh Allen. You have this this specialized weapon who can do so much for you. Let's do whatever we can to maximize his prime. This is a receiver-rich draft, like I mentioned. So if you want to wait and just see who falls to you, that's fine. But we also know Brandon Beane's history and his ability and his to go get guys that they want. And who knows? Maybe they don't see it with Brian Thomas Jr. Maybe they don't, or maybe they like him but don't love him enough to go get that receiver. But if you're looking for a true X, there's just not many of those guys in this draft. And as much as I do like Adonai Mitchell, I do like Ladd McConkey, I do think that Brian Thomas is the clear cut fourth receiver in this draft. And if you have a chance to go get him, and it's not too cost prohibitive, maybe use that second rounder next year from the Texans in the Stephon Diggs trade. So you're not giving up necessarily draft picks this year. Maybe you're not necessarily giving up a future one, anything like that. You're looking at like house money, and so the chance to go get a guy like that it'll be considered. Obviously, they'll talk about it, and maybe on draft day, that's what they decide is the best option.
The best option for everybody listening right now is to go over to theathletic.com, subscribe, and dig into the beast. It is worth your time. I have been clawing at this thing the last couple of days. It is as good as ever. Deep dive, learning so much about all of the positions that obviously the Bills are going to be targeting in this draft and the potential players that they can take. Dane, thank you so much for taking the time today. I know that you're on kind of like the marathon run here after this thing comes out. Everybody wants a little piece. We really appreciate you giving us a few minutes.
No, anytime. I'm glad it worked out. Thanks, man.